I was 18 years old when I got married, and I thought I knew what love meant. I thought passion would carry us. I thought commitment was enough. But I was standing at the edge of a spiritual battlefield, holding hands with someone I barely understood, walking into a covenant I didn't fully grasp. Listen to me. This isn't just about marriage. This is about what happens when we make lifetime decisions with a childlike view of God and the cost that comes when we don't wait for His voice. Some of you are watching right now and you are about to make a decision that will shape the next 40 years of your life. Maybe it's about a relationship. Maybe it's about a move, a commitment, a direction you feel pressured to take. But I came to warn you in love. You don't have to walk into the fire just to learn that it burns. If God did not author it, you don't need to carry it. When I said I do at 18, I wasn't just stepping into a marriage, I was stepping outside of God's timing. And let me tell you something, you can marry the right person at the wrong time and still live a wrong life. I wasn't spiritually ready. I hadn't been molded, shaped, or broken enough for that level of covenant. The ring was real, the vows were serious, but the foundation wasn't strong enough to carry the storm that was coming. God doesn't look at your age. He looks at your alignment. You can be 18 or 48, but if you're not aligned with God's will, you're still out of order. Some of us are more worried about being alone than we are about being obedient. So we rush, we settle, we ignore red flags. We say God will fix it later, not realizing that obedience delayed is still disobedience. And yes, I faced heartbreak. Yes, I cried. Yes, I asked God why. But I learned something sacred in the pain. When we don't listen to God's whisper, He will let us feel the consequences of our own voice. That marriage didn't make me evil. It didn't make them evil. But it exposed how incomplete we both were and how much we needed God, not just each other. If you're 18 and watching this, or 28 or 58, it doesn't matter your age. What matters is this: are you listening to God? Are you seeking His will or just your own comfort? Because let me tell you, marriage is not just romance. It's warfare, it's ministry, it's purpose. And if God is not at the center, you'll make someone your savior who was never meant to carry that weight. Now hear this, it's never too late to return to God's plan. Maybe you already stepped into something too early. Maybe you rushed. Maybe you're broken. But God is a redeemer. He can take your mess and turn it into a ministry. He can take your tears and make them a testimony. If you give Him everything, yes, even your regrets, He will make it all new. To the young girl dreaming of the wedding but ignoring the warnings, wait on God. To the man pressured by loneliness, wait on God. To the parents pushing your child into decisions that aren't born in prayer, stop and seek God. Because I was 18 when I got married, but I was 21 when I realized I needed God more than I needed a partner. I was 23 when I learned that healing begins when pride ends. And I was 25 when I finally let God rewrite my story. You don't need to learn the hard way, you just need to listen. And today He's speaking. When you're 18, you think you're invincible. You think the world is yours to shape. You feel everything deeply, love, dreams, promises. And you believe that your feelings alone can carry you through the storms of life. But feelings aren't foundations. Passion isn't wisdom. And a vow made in immaturity can become a prison if it's not rooted in God's purpose. I was 18 when I made one of the biggest decisions of my life. I thought I was ready because I had good intentions. I thought I was prepared because I prayed once or twice. But I mistook emotion for revelation. I mistook desire for destiny. I made a lifelong decision without knowing what life would demand. That's the danger of early decisions. They feel right in the moment, but they reveal their cost in the storm. At 18, no one told me that love wasn't enough. No one told me that chemistry fades, that conflict is guaranteed, that patience is a spiritual fruit and not a personality trait. I walked into something holy with a heart that hadn't been healed. I stood at the altar with hands lifted but eyes closed to the truth. And the truth was this: I wasn't listening to God, I was listening to my loneliness. And loneliness has a loud voice. It tells you to rush. It tells you to settle. It convinces you that having someone, anyone, is better than waiting for the one sent by God. But the enemy knows that if he can get you to make the wrong decision early, he can spend the next decade using it to wear down your faith. That's what happened to me. I didn't just make a mistake. I entered a battle I wasn't built for yet. I didn't have the armor, the discipline, or the discernment to fight for what marriage demands. And I learned that the devil doesn't need to destroy you outright. He just needs you to choose wrong before you're ready. He doesn't need to tempt you with evil. He just needs to rush you into something that's good before it's God. That's why early decisions are so dangerous. Because they carry long shadows. They shape your identity. They shake your foundation. And sometimes they leave you crying out to God in the middle of a life you chose without Him. I used to think that age was the sign of readiness. That if you reached a certain number, you were prepared for commitment, for responsibility, for marriage. But I learned something sacred through my own experience. God is not impressed by your age. He is moved by your alignment. You can be 18 and in tune with heaven, or you can be 38 and still deaf to His voice. Maturity is not measured by years lived, but by how deeply you've surrendered your will to God. Some people are in their 20s, but their spirit has walked through valleys and fire, and they hear God with clarity. Others have lived decades, but still fight the same pride, the same fear, the same rebellion that's kept them from His plan. When I got married young, I wasn't aligned. I was emotionally driven, culturally pressured, and spiritually disconnected. I wanted the benefits of God's covenant without walking through the process of His preparation. And the truth is, alignment often looks like delay. It looks like silence. It looks like waiting when everyone else is running. But that's where power is born. In the still places where God breaks you before He builds you. When you're aligned with God, decisions come with peace, not panic. When you're aligned, you don't have to chase. You wait and trust, because His voice will lead you where your emotions can't. Alignment is costly. It means dying to what you want in the moment so that you can receive what God wants for your lifetime. But many of us ignore that cost. We assume that just because we're grown, we're ready. Just because others did it, we should. We treat life decisions like trends instead of sacred assignments. And the danger of that is this: God will not bless what you force into place outside of His order. The alignment of your heart matters more than the timeline of your life. God is not rushed. He is not late. He is not moved by your birthday or by your feelings. He is moved by your surrender. And until you're aligned with His purpose, no amount of passion, planning, or pressure will bring you the peace your soul is truly longing for. I used to blame God for the pain that came after I said I cried out, wondering why He would let me suffer. Why would He allow something that felt so right to turn into something so hard? But over time, with tears on my pillow and silence in my spirit, I realized the pain didn't come because God failed me. The pain came because I didn't truly listen to Him in the first place. He wasn't punishing me, He had been warning me. But I wasn't tuned in. I was too excited to hear the truth, too emotionally attached to obey the red flags, too afraid to be alone to wait for clarity. And that's what many people don't understand. God will never lead you into something that destroys your peace, but He will allow you to walk through what you choose without Him. He gave me signs. He stirred discomfort in my heart. He allowed certain things to feel off, but instead of pausing, I pushed. I wrapped my desires in spiritual language. I told myself God will fix it later. But obedience doesn't work like that. We can't ask God to bless what we build on disobedience. We can't invite Him in after we've locked the door on His direction. So the pain that followed, It wasn't divine punishment. It was the natural consequence of building on sand instead of stone. I had built my marriage on emotions, assumptions, and broken expectations. And when the storm came, the foundation cracked. Some of the deepest wounds we carry don't come from life simply being hard. They come from walking paths God never assigned to us. And when we ignore His voice, we open the door to confusion, disappointment, and spiritual exhaustion. But here's what's dangerous. When we hurt from our own choices, we often blame God for the pain, and that blame creates distance. We stop praying, we grow bitter, we think He abandoned us, when in truth, He was speaking, but we were too distracted to listen. God doesn't want to watch you suffer. He wants to lead you into peace, but His peace requires our surrender. And until we learn to hear Him above the noise of our feelings, we'll keep repeating cycles that were never part of His plan. Getting married at 18 taught me more about God's timing than any sermon I had ever heard. Because when everything started falling apart, I didn't just question myself, I questioned God. I asked, why didn't this work? I thought love was enough. I thought this was supposed to be beautiful. But I learned something deep in that valley. A good thing at the wrong time can become a heavy burden instead of a blessing. I thought because my heart was sincere, the timing didn't matter. But timing is everything in God's kingdom. You can plant the right seed, but if you do it in the wrong season, it will struggle to grow. God's timing is not based on human emotion. It's based on preparation. He doesn't rush what He's still shaping. He doesn't release what isn't yet ready. But we don't want to wait. We want to move fast, feel good, and figure things out as we go. And that's exactly where I was. Young, hopeful, and spiritually underdeveloped. I didn't wait to ask God, is this your plan? I assumed if I wanted it, He'd bless it. But desire is not the same as divine instruction. God is not obligated to sustain what we create outside His will. Looking back, I realized that what I needed at 18 wasn't marriage, it was maturity. I needed to discover who I was in Christ before I tried to build a life with someone else. But in my rush, I skipped the process. I skipped the pain that teaches patience. I skipped the quiet that trains you to hear God. And in doing so, I entered a covenant without the character to carry it. That's what marriage taught me, not that love fails, but that love without timing is like building a house without a foundation. The structure may stand for a while, but eventually the cracks will show. God's timing is not punishment, it's protection. He sees the storms ahead. He knows the parts of you that still need healing, pruning. And if He delays a blessing, it's not because He's withholding, it's because He's preparing. I learned through that early marriage that no matter how pure your intentions are, if you step outside His timeline, you'll end up learning lessons in pain that you could have learned in peace. One of the greatest lies the enemy whispers is that if you started wrong, you're doomed to finish broken. That because you made a decision too soon, got married too young, gave your heart too quickly, stepped into something before you were ready, your story is over. But I came to tell you, you can start too soon, but it's never too late to be redeemed. God doesn't throw people away because of bad timing. He's not shocked by your detour. He's not surprised by your heartbreak. And He doesn't cancel His plans because you made a mistake. No, He steps into the mess. He picks up the pieces, and if you let Him, He will take the ashes and turn them into something beautiful. I started too soon. I carried pain I wasn't meant to carry. I wore shame I didn't know how to take off. There were nights I laid in bed wondering if this was how the rest of my life would look, tied to a decision I made before I knew who I was. But in those quiet, broken moments, God began to show me something. Redemption is not just for sinners. It's for saints who stumbled too early. It's for people like me who loved too hard, trusted too soon, and realized too late that wisdom doesn't come with a wedding band. I thought the story was over, but God was just beginning. He used the pain to soften my pride. He used the tears to wash away my assumptions. He used the silence to train my ears to hear Him clearly. And what I found is this: God doesn't require a perfect beginning to give you a powerful ending. He's not asking for flawless decisions. He's asking for a surrendered heart. Because the same God who let me walk through the fire is the same God who stood with me in it. He never left. He never stopped calling me back. Even when I thought I disqualified myself, He kept speaking purpose over my life. And that's what I want you to know if you're sitting in the consequences of something you began too early. You are not disqualified. You are not discarded. You are not too far gone. You are right in the hands of a God who redeems time, restores joy, and rewrites stories with His grace. Love is a beautiful thing when it's pure, when it's patient, when it's led by God, but when it's rushed, when it's driven by fear, loneliness, or pressure, it becomes something dangerous. I didn't know that at 18. I thought love alone could carry the weight of life. I thought if two people cared for each other enough, everything else would fall into place. But I was wrong, because love that isn't mature is not love, it's fantasy. And when you rush into something that deep, without the wisdom to sustain it, you don't just risk your happiness, you risk your whole future. That's what happened to me. I rushed into love and it started sweet. But it didn't stay that way. Not because the other person was evil. Not because I didn't mean well. But because I hadn't taken time to ask the hard questions. To heal from old wounds or to grow in spiritual understanding. Rushing love feels exciting. It feels like escape. It feels like finally being seen. Finally being chosen. But those feelings are not the same as foundation. You can be chosen and still be crushed. You can be seen and still be stepped on. You can wear a ring and still carry resentment. The truth is, when you rush love, you skip the testing that proves if it's real. You skip the time it takes to see someone's character, their convictions, their relationship with God. You skip the stretching of your own heart that prepares you to serve, not just be satisfied. And without that time, you don't build love, you build a fragile dream that starts to collapse when reality hits. That's how a rushed love can wreck a lifetime. Because when the emotions fade, and they will, you're left with the structure you built. And if that structure was built in fear, in insecurity, in rebellion, it will start to crumble. The fights begin, the silence grows, the intimacy disappears, and suddenly what once looked like a blessing feels like a burden. But by then you're entangled, financially, emotionally, spiritually. And what should have been a season of joy becomes a battlefield you never trained for. I learned the hard way that just because you feel ready doesn't mean you are. And just because you want something doesn't mean it's your time. God's love is not rushed, it's rooted, it's steady. And when He writes your love story, He doesn't start with emotion, He starts with preparation. So now you've heard my story, not just about marriage, but about mistakes, mercy, and the miracle of redemption. I was 18 when I got married, and what I thought would be the beginning of a dream became the start of a deep refining fire. I didn't know then what I know now, that love without timing is dangerous. That decisions made without divine direction carry consequences, and that rushing into something before you're ready doesn't make you brave. It makes you vulnerable. But even in the ashes of what broke, God never left me. Even when I ignored His voice, He was still whispering. Even when I thought it was too late, He was just getting started. I tell you this not to shame young love, but to awaken those who are walking blind into life-changing choices. I speak this so you can pause and ask yourself, am I doing this with God, or just with my feelings? Because feelings fade, excitement fades, but the voice of God, that's the only anchor that will hold when the storms come, and they will come. Let my journey be your mirror. Let my pain be your warning. But most of all, let my healing be your hope. You may have started wrong. You may have rushed ahead. You may be sitting in regret, thinking the damage is too deep. But I'm living proof. God restores. God realigns. God rewrites. If you give Him your broken pieces, He'll build something stronger than before. You don't have to stay stuck in what you chose too soon. You can start again. Not in fear, but in faith. Not in shame, but in surrender. This is your moment to pause, to seek, to listen,
to align with the timing of heaven. Because when you walk in step with God, what you build won't just last. It will bless generations. So take your time, guard your heart, and trust that if God is truly in it, you won't have to rush to keep it. May His wisdom guide you, may His timing protect you, and may His grace carry you all the way home.